Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome co-directors Angela Patton and Natalie Rae, along with Fatherhood Coach Chad M. Morris, in conversation with political journalist Dr. Nee Cordy.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm not crying. You're crying. Wasn't that moving? Wasn't that a moving film? Let's give them a hand. Whoa! I'm Dr. Natalie Rae. I'm author of the book Kamala, the Motherland and Me. I'm also host and chief White House correspondent for KBLA Talk Radio in Los Angeles. I am delighted to be here at the Martha's Vineyard African American Film Festival. And so delighted to be in conversation with each and every one of you after that extraordinary film. I've got to start with you, Natalie. What inspired you to tell this story and talk about how you began the process of documenting these young girls over the course of nearly a decade?
I know, it's a long time, it's surreal. First, also, thank you for being such a wonderful audience. I don't think I've sat through and been so energized, and so thanks for that. It was so beautiful to be here with you all. When I came across Angela's TED Talk, I think it resonated with me on so many levels. Previous to this film, I'd been sort of dedicating my career to telling young women's stories and been working kind of around the world in different areas. And the way that Angela spoke about these girls knowing what they needed to heal themselves and their family was just so profound. And before that, I was in this work kind of empowering women, let's work on gender equality, but I felt like the message was always talking down to young girls, like they should be doing something more. And to me, that seemed a little bit backwards, and that we should be just giving space to young women to be exactly what they should be. And perhaps even the young ones have more connection with their intuition, and really free thinkers. Change comes from the young. And I think Angela and I, that's how we really bonded. We really believe that young people can make the change in this world. So it resonated so much with me, and I told her, oh my God, this, just stuck with me so much. But also on a personal level, our fathers are our mirrors. I think I really, at that time in my life, was thinking about the relationship with my own father and a lot of time that he was away from me when I was growing up. So I felt like this story, no matter who you were, what kind of family you had, it could be healing and powerful.
It's very healing and powerful. I mean, I lost my father nearly 20 years ago. It's a different kind of wound, when your father passes away, but it's a loss nonetheless. Chad, I want to bring you into the conversation. You spent a lot of intimate time with these men, listening to them share their heart with you, share things with you that maybe they hadn't shared with anybody before. Talk to us about the process. What was the process like for you to begin to develop that trust, to develop that bond among men that weren't used to engaging with other men and bonding with other men in that way?
That's a great question. You saw in the film how some of the men explained just that they had a particular expectation when they came into the room. And so what I'm mindful of in engaging these men is that beyond the trappings and the visual that you have when you see a man in a jumpsuit, or you're in an incarcerated setting and these men walk every day with the burdens they have from navigating inside of the prison system while their families are on the outside, the approach I always take is to greet them on a very basic level, to be transparent, a little bit of use of self, reminding them that I'm not here to teach you anything, but operating from a space of already understanding that one assumption I make when I deal with these men is that I assume that if you can shift your knowledge base and your attitude base, you may be able to get different results and be able to show up differently, but also that you are who you've been waiting for to show up. And so in working with them, in engaging them in the conversations is done from a place of operating with them as men first and fathers first and finding that commonality, that regardless of what paths our lives have taken and what predicament they find themselves in while they're incarcerated, that's the basis. That I'm dealing with you as a man. I'm not dealing with you as the number that is attached to you, your incarceration number, or the jumpsuit that you have on, or what pod you came from, or what set you claim if you have an affiliation, or what religiosity, or what group you come from. Because those girls only know that man is daddy. And so these men, they're incentivized to participate in the group because they thought they could get an extra visit. I take full advantage of it. You want to get that extra visit, and we're going to spend this time together, and we're going to be very intentional, but I'm here with you. And so enrolling them in that place requires us to operate in the space of trust, a little bit of introspection. Nobody in the room is an observer except for when the camera crew is present. Everyone who's there is a participant, and they're not goaded or pushed to participate, but it's in a space where the more you share, the farther we can go.
That's beautiful. Isn't that beautiful? The film really represents such an exercise in compassion and empathy, and we see that among the fathers, but we also see it among the young girls. And I want to invite Angela Patton into the conversation. Angela is the CEO of Girls for a Change, dedicated to supporting these young women. Angela, how did you become a part of the film, and what inspired you to want to spotlight the Date with Dad program in a documentary format over the course of nearly a decade?
Say that again. I had this opportunity to do a TED Talk, and immediately after I finished, filmmakers approached me. And I really didn't understand what they were able to see, because everyone said, I want to tell a jail story. I want to tell that, how did you get in the prison? Who let you in? And I could tell that they totally missed what I was sharing, that the girls were the center of this particular story. But just the fact that I was able to have access to the prison, people were interested in that. I was like, I don't understand this. And so then emails started to come, still more jail stories. And then I received this email from Natalie, and it was a few years after the TED Talk, and it was now on TED.com. And Natalie was the only one that understood that we needed to focus on the girls. And as we started to grow our relationship, because I just want to be clear that 8 years was not just filming. 2 years was getting to know each other. Understanding the reason that I show up to do this work, because that was somebody coming into my calling. And I was clear that I needed to protect it, that I needed to understand something new, but I also appreciated the invitation to partner. And that means you have to build this relationship. And so Natalie was very intentional about understanding what that meant for not me, but these girl stories. And so as we started to build this relationship, we both were clear that it was a love story, not a jail story. And that is the reason I'm here today, because we understood what we needed.
And that's what we felt. Didn't we feel that? Did y'all feel the love? Clap if you felt the love. We really felt the love. You mentioned your father in the film and being able to count on your dad. And there were so many tender moments in the film. I was tearing up right over here when young girls were sitting in their dad's laps. Raise your hand if you remember what it felt like to sit in your dad's lap, if you ever had that experience. Did that scene take you back there for a minute? Yeah. And then, when the dads sort of lean over and offer their commitment, that recommit to their daughters, it was so beautiful. There was a simple elegance in how you did that, how you captured that. Talk to us about how the relationship with your dads, and I'll start with you, Angela, how the relationships with your fathers showed up over the course of the 8 years of putting this film together.
Gratitude. I think I used to take advantage of the fact that I was the lucky girl. And I say that because not only has my father. My father's 85 years old, y'all, and he just texted me and was like, do a good job. Isn't that a blessing? An 85-year-old doing well, man, and he was like, I wish I was there with you. I'm like, Dad, it's too hot for you. But I just wanted to share that my experiences with Black girls who do have their fathers in their lives, and those of them that are going through some challenges, bumpy roads, and trying to strengthen their relationships, allows me to be really grateful for the fact that my father has always shown up. My father is so significant in my life that he also reminded me about what I needed in a man. And my man is here, my husband is here, who shows up every day the same way I am. And I understand the example of that. And so I did not have a problem choosing, because my father was clear, you know, from a very early age, that I was his princess and what I deserved, and that he was there for me. And then, I have a daughter now with my husband, and my daughter has the double duty. You know, she has a grandfather pouring that into her, and her own father, and her big brother. And I understand, you know, that I'm just blessed to have that, because I see something on the other side. And then I end by saying, my 3 best friends that I grew up with, all of us had our mother and our father in our lives, and still today, and we are 53 years old, and our parents are thriving and still showing up and supporting us. And I just was like, that's priceless. Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for it every day. So, and I just share that love and pour it into other girls, and continue to celebrate my father when I'm on this journey in this film.
It's beautiful. Natalie, share with us how your dad showed up in the making of this film, and tell us why you decided to film this in this particular facility. And I'm sure there's a lot that happened over the course of 8 years. What made this facility the one that you all wanted to devote so much time and effort to?
Yeah, I mean, my dad did so much for me over the course of this project, but also a lot before that. Like Angela, I'm so close with my father, and I know what it's really like to be loved and have that security, and to have a voice deep inside of me when I'm worried about taking a risk, or if I'm unsure about myself or something. Like, I really feel everything he's given me and been there for me in my life, and including, which is cool, he's a filmmaker as well. So when I was 6 years old and I learned about this idea of endangered species, I was quite concerned that like animals could be passing away, and you kind of learn these concepts. And he was like, well, if you want to do something about it, you could make a little documentary, you know. And so he encouraged me to call the zoo and talk about this like endangered polar bear, and maybe I could go and film it. So he told me that if I wanted to make, you know, a difference about these issues, I could, you know, documentary was an avenue. So yeah, I wouldn't be here, this film wouldn't be here, all of it, because of my dad. So
That's beautiful. Thank you. Chad, how did your dad, or your relationship with your dad, how did it show up in the making of this film?
Interestingly enough, my dad. So I am all things my daddy's son and a mama's boy at the same time. My dad grew up on a farm. He was a first generation or first year integrator into integrated school system. So his expectations of me, and he was in the military for a number of years before I was born, and he thought I was his little personal G.I. Joe, man. But it's a couple of things. He was always present, and regardless of what went on, he was the type of individual that I was a little curiously minded. I won't call myself, I wouldn't label myself as mischievous when I was young, but I was just curious. And that led me into this place, this imaginary place called trouble sometimes. But he always put me in a position to have to explain exactly what I did without deviating from the conversation, without dotting my I's away from him. I had to maintain eye contact. I had to listen to everything he said, because he was going to get it off his chest. And before it turned into another type of punishment, you know, I participated in the conversation. I had to show up, and I knew I couldn't lie, but I couldn't shake and deviate from it. I couldn't duck. I couldn't present an excuse, and I couldn't say I didn't know. And I didn't appreciate it as a child. However, as I got older, I realized that when difficult situations came or it was time for difficult conversations, I would hear him say, you show up and you get to work. Get it done. Go through it to get to it. These are things he used to tell me all the time. And the other thing that I think really helps me with my dad, I was a wood chopper when I got in trouble, right? And my dad had this axe, and this directly relates to this film. I won't be long-winded. When I would get in a little bit of that, traveling to that place, imaginary place called trouble, and couldn't go beyond the yard's boundaries, I could go outside and do whatever, I would pick up the axe and go and chop wood. And he bought me an axe one year, and the axe was shiny, and I left it there. So I go out, and one of the times I wasn't in trouble, I just felt like chopping wood. I just would do it. I left the shiny axe hanging in the tool shed. He came outside, he said, boy, why you got my axe? I said, because I like your axe. He said, I bought you your own, it's your tool. I said, but it's shiny. He said, boy, what good is a shiny axe? And what I took from that, and I won't go into this full explanation, was if you use these tools, they're going to be weathered. It's your responsibility to make sure you keep your tools intact, and you don't have to brag about what you've been doing. I didn't ask you what you were doing because I see how much wood you chopped. So if you keep working and you keep chopping, that power will grow. Nobody has to ask what you're doing. So when it comes to this process, what's captured on film, we've been doing it for almost a dozen years before that, or 10 years before that. It was what we were doing. We were doing the work, and consistency in doing the work, and Angela having the opportunity to share that portion of the work is what helped us get here today, because we stand up for people and try to amplify the voices of people who aren't listened to. And that goes back to the first thing I said about how my dad told me to show up. Be accountable and amplify your voice. Speak with your chest and keep your chest off your chin and say what you have to say. And that is how I'm able to go into those rooms. That's how I'm able to stand beside Angela and Natalie to commit to this work. Angela asked me, hey, we got somewhere to go. What do you need me to do? That's how we've been operating since we started this process. So my dad informed all of that, so I'm greatly appreciative of him.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. Feels like your dads are on stage. All of our dads are on stage. I can hear my dad saying right now, son, your attitude will determine your altitude.
Come on, man.
I've got to ask you, just to pick up this thread, Chad, from your experience, talk to us about the role that fathers play in shaping the identity and confidence of their daughter. You know, in the film, you all, talk so eloquently about the father wound and the mother wound, the parent wound. And I'm not a dad yet, but you gave me a lot to think about as I am on that journey.
Okay. So the city we're from is a city that if you were to raise 10 fingers on your hand, right? Drop 5 of them and leave 5 up. If we talk about households with children in them, there are, not 5, 4. You keep 4 fingers up. So the rate of single parent households is running around 40%. So you're talking about if you have 10 households with children in them, you got 6 out of 10, right? And so what that really translates to is, it's not an assumption that dads are locked up. We're not making any assumptions on that, but dad might not be in the home, because most of those single parent households are mother-led households. Then you talk about dads who are incarcerated. So I know intricately, I'm a girl dad myself. I'm responsible for showing them an example. The same way Angela eloquently explained, the same way Natalie eloquently explained. I can't explain it from a daughter's perspective, but I know my responsibility to my daughters is to make sure I show them how I'm supposed to show up, and to help you work on those things that might not be inherent in your nature, to use some critical thinking and discernment as you navigate this world, because there are people waiting for you who aren't well-intended, especially when you're talking about girls. They're not well-intended for you navigating this world by yourself. And so my job is to show up for these incarcerated men. It's a different situation, because incarceration and these practices regarding visitation put them in a place where the family's incarcerated on the outside because they don't have access to dad. without having to pay for visitation, without having to pay for a video call. They don't get, most jails have practices where they don't get physical letters and pictures. It's all through email. There's no in-touch visit. It is very dehumanizing on both sides for people to go through that. So children don't always know that the predicaments they're in, sometimes they think those predicaments are their fault. And it's never their fault. These are decisions that people make or situations they find themselves in that have dire consequences of them being separated for an extended period of time. We're not even talking about guilt or innocence or what somebody did, but there's a separation there. And the child is not necessarily deserving of that. And so it's really important to work with these men on first being accountable to themselves, for themselves, so that regardless of the length of their sentence, especially these men, that they can still find ways to be supportive, because every day you wake up, you're the brand new parent of a brand new child, regardless of the distance. That child needs you. And so whatever you're able to do and whatever you project to do on this pivotal moment of this dance where all these emotions are high, the reason why we have those conversations before and after is to leave that lasting impression on them that you know what you did before to get here. What are you going to do differently if you want a different result? And if you miss this feeling, the pain of separating from your child, walking away from you, if it's that great, make sure you remember how that felt. And if you don't want to feel that again, when you're able to get to the other side of this thing, hopefully that could be an incentivizing factor for you to stay on a trajectory to not go back.
In a little bit, we will all get up from here. We'll leave this theater and we will, go about our evening, go about our day. But this is real life. This is real life for the folks in this film. And it is a life that is on a continuum. Their lives, their stories didn't just stop when the credits started rolling. And so, Angela and Natalie, I want to invite you to talk to us about just overcoming the challenge around capturing authenticity on the screen. How did you tell this story while respecting the painful reality of these girls, the painful reality of these men, the painful reality of these moms? Talk to us about how you navigated that.
I can start. One of the advantages that we have is that Girls for a Change is a nonprofit organization that has done this work for 20 years in the Richmond, Virginia area and has been extremely, thank you. And our program is impactful. And so when the girls actually came up with the idea to take the dance in the jail, where the benefit is that I understood that it couldn't be just a dance. The girls saw it as a dance, but after they wrote the letter to the sheriff, and Sheriff T. Whitty and I had a conversation, we knew that we needed to put a program in place, because the question that you just asked was the same question that we had. This is really tapping into the mother, because no matter what the jail say, at the end of the day, the mother make the decision. At the end of the day, she can change her mind. So we understood that we had to put together a program that would allow the mothers to feel that they can vent their pain, their anger, their sadness, and also their excitement. We have some mothers that are just like, can I volunteer? What can I do? And actually help the other mothers that are struggling really become more engaged and wanting to participate, because they see the ending result. And so there is a curriculum that Girls for Change has put together. And then I also knew that Chad was at the Trinity Family Life Center already doing, family and fatherhood work. And so we connected and we made sure that the fathers had what they needed. And then it's Girls for a Change, should I say more, right? We definitely already had the girls who asked for it. And so now it was just time to make sure that they were ready for it. Right? Can you receive this? And what type of mental health support are we going to make sure that you have, so that you can make sure that when you see your father and when you're planning this dance, that you do not allow his choices to define you. That's very important for the girls to understand that. right? And what are we going to do to continue to celebrate, see you, and hear you? And then lastly, I would wrap up is that the families in DC had to go through the same thing. And that was trust building, right? And making sure that they were participating in the program and that they had someone like Chad. And I would visit, the fathers once or twice so they can have that sacred and brave space of their own, just as important to me to have for the girls. And then I'll allow Natalie to share how the cameras came in.
Yeah, I mean, because Angela has such a strong track record with Girls for Change and doing this program for over 10 years, there was a lot of ways the families could feel comfortable to a certain degree, knowing the success of what this father-daughter dance had done for other families. But there's still people that were nervous or unsure, and so as you see in the film, Angela, talking to the moms and Chad talking with the fathers and sort of preparing them, and some mothers being really unsure or on the fence and concerned. So it was really interesting for me to kind of observe and be able to capture Angela really doing that work and Chad doing his work. But I think going back to just working with these families and how do you build trust and when do you bring a camera out, and it's a very delicate subject matter, obviously. But because I always wanted, and same with Angela, to be from the girl's perspective, what are your ideas? Let's hang out, let's chat. Like, I just wanted to get to know Aubrey and like her really inquisitive mind, and she'd always want to talk about her nightmares and her dreams and like very imaginative. And actually same with Santana, she really went on about these nightmares she was having, and often kids, like, that's a way they communicate what's going on for them. They may not self-analyze and have this big like therapy conversation. It's more like, how are you feeling? What's going on? Like, how do you want to look out the window? Tell me about the nightmares, and so I really let them guide the way, and sometimes I'd be like, okay, that's enough. They'd be like, I'm not done. Ask me more questions. Like I think that the interview with Santana that we did, that is at the beginning of her introduction in the film, we were like 2 hours, we were running out of camera cards, and she's like, I'm not done, I have more to talk about. So it was really like, these girls have something to say, they called me in, they didn't want me to leave, and so then you just become part of the family, and often just going for birthdays or a hospital or a cookout, and the cameras are probably there less time than we had them on, and then you just develop a rhythm and a trust, and the moms can feel very free to tell me to go away, which luckily they didn't, but they feel comfortable with me. So it's just really, you get in a groove and then you go with that, communicating really openly with each other.
And what a marvelous job, just sort of even taking us in. You can clap to that. Taking us into their world. It was interesting watching the kids sort of, have sort of a childlike, they're having their childlike experience, but they're also reconciling that with adult situations and adult consequences, and they're using their kid words, right? But we still understand what that means. There's a lot of work that still continues around criminal justice reform, and that work will endure. But there's something about this story that brought us closer to the people that are impacted by the system that they are governed by. Talk to us. I want to give each of you a chance in this closing question to respond to this. Why is this story important to share in the world now, in 2024? Why is it important to tell this story, and what impact do you hope this documentary will have on a global audience? Chad, you want to get us started?
Oh, you got me. Okay. I think that when we talk about, one thing I respect about the work Angela's always done is unapologetically, it has always been about preparing Black girls for the world for Black girls. And we were working simultaneously doing family strengthening work. So we do rites of passage programs for both, girls and boys. We do leadership development and all this stuff, and fatherhood and motherhood co-parenting programming. But what is impactful about this film and these particular people is Black girls have under-amplified voices. And the lens that's put on them is not always a lens that's intentional for their health, wealth, being, benefit, and growth, right? And for incarcerated men particularly, they are very much overlooked. When we see that orange jumpsuit, the assumptions about what they've done might resonate in people's minds, especially outside of a film like this one. To be able to amplify that in the state that we're in today and the things that are going on just in the world, and the fact that prison visitation practices are not improving on a scale that's conducive to rapid change. They've gotten more restrictive, especially through the pandemic, and it's a slow turn to change those things. I think that's the issue that impacts probably everybody in the room to one degree or another. Not making assumptions that we have family members who may have been through it, but we know people who are in this predicament. We are friends with people, or we grew up with people who are in this predicament. And so to be able to put a spotlight on the issue which has an impact, for people to be able to see and it be able to remind them of their own personal relationships. We're all somebody's son or somebody's daughter. And those of us that are blessed to have children, or those of us that are aunts and uncles, those relationships are incredibly important. So in a world where we're distracted by everything that's wrong and everything that people argue about, a love story in this day and time, and a love story that's told from the most unlikeliest of sources where people wouldn't think this work happens, I think is exactly what we need right now.
It's beautiful. I'm not my brother's keeper, I'm my brother. I'm not my sister's keeper, I'm my sister.
Okay. I would say that every year that this film was made, it is an important story. The urgency around it and the scale at which it's important, I think has been important equally every year. As we were going through making the film, learning about touch visits going away became something very central that we came across as we were interviewing the fathers and the daughters, asking them, what would you want to change about your situation right now? And the number one answer that everyone had was, I just want to be able to touch them. I just want to be able to touch my dad, touch my daughter. And this was before COVID, so it was more like 2014, 15. But then with COVID, then everything shuts down, and then getting visitation back will become even harder. But hopefully, now that everyone's had the opportunity around the world to know what it's like to be shut off from your loved ones, maybe there's sort of a collective consciousness around the importance of this, because everyone's experienced it at least a little bit. And we know that an infant will die if they're not held. Touch is the number one language of love for children, to feel that, and it will stay with them, and it'll stay in their cells for months. And so even if you only had that experience once every 3 months with your father, twice a year, that lasting love would stay with you. So I think it's just compounded. And of course, this time of bringing people together and celebrating unity in the States is something that I'm passionate about, and hopefully this film can help.
Angela?
Ooh, all of that. Every time I've been doing this a long time, y'all, get an opportunity to have a dance in the jail, the Date with Dad program, work with beautiful young Black girls, that question comes up in my head and I change it, right? Day by day. And that's because I'm, again, one of the lucky ones, and I'm working with the girls all the time. So I'm always listening, and I'm learning from them. And so one thing that I would like people to take away is that it is important to partner with young people. We are in this room today because I listen to young Black girls who had a dream and this unstoppable imagination. We are here because of them first. And I always want people to know that that's what I am so fortunate to experience every day, is that I know when you get in a dark space and you worry about the future, Google Girls for a Change, because they got you covered. I do want to say that. But what I want people to also take away is that this is a tool to create change at a level that I do not believe that we have out in the world, especially in the, the film world a lot. I think this is a refreshing film, right? Because you get to really be a part of these young girls and their lives, and it's very personable, and you see yourself in the film because you know your own relationships with your family. You know, you feel them, and you're like, what could I do? You cannot watch this film and not want to do something. This film is a tool for everyone in this building and everyone on the outside. Whether you're doing prison reform work, whether you're trying to get yourself together, whether you're trying to heal wounds in your own home with your own father or your own children, I do believe that we have created something that can actually make not only the world better, but think about making yourself better. Because it is something in that film that does something to me every day, and I want it to be contagious.
Amen, amen, amen. Let's give another hand to the co-directors, Natalie Rae, Angela Patton, to Mr. Chad Morris. This is what change can look like. This is what radical imagination can look like. Thank you all very much. Be sure to check out the film. Tell everybody to check out the film on August 14th. That's when it's released on Netflix. And so sharing is caring. Be sure to share the word.